This video contains spoilers for the Incredibles films.
So soon.
That's fine. Of course I have a secret identity. Can you see me in this at the supermarket? Come on. I would want to go shopping as Elastigirl, you know what I mean?
No matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I mean, sometimes I just want it to stay saved, for a little bit. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
You get to that point. Wait,
Please?
don't get up there.
Incredibles 2 was the sequel that came a little too late, as in 14 years too late. But the fans took it willingly, because of how freaking badass the first movie was. The idea of finally seeing the Parr family hit the screen once again was just so exciting. However, even though the second, and possibly final, installment of the Incredibles series was met with, really good reviews, I really didn't like this movie.
Why do you do this?
It's taken me a long time and a lot of rewatches to process this. I remember getting destroyed by my friends in the car on the way home from the theater for thinking that this movie was stupid. And I even tried convincing myself that it was great, but I really just couldn't. I even went back and saw it again the next day, just to make sure that I had seen the same movie as everyone else who was raving about it. So before you click away and think that I'm too critical, let me explain. I value specific aspects of film. Maybe aspects that not everyone else values. See, I prioritize a good villain in a good film. Maybe a lot higher than most people. I believe strongly in the notion that a movie is only as good as its villain. A lot of the films that I think are amazing are films with a good antagonist. And even though I love Marvel movies, I'm fully aware that they'd all be a lot stronger with some more compelling villains. But Incredibles 2 had an awful villain. Even most of the people who loved this movie complained about Evelyn Deavor, the boring, whiny character in the background who has a plan that doesn't really make any sense. Yes, I understand that Incredibles 2 is a kids' movie, but that doesn't mean that the entire plot twist needs to be shoved down our throats like we're little children. All the people who watched the first Incredibles when it came out in theaters are now 14 years older. So having a character named Evelyn Deavor is just so dumb. I was sitting in the theater, and literally the moment that they said this chick's name was Evil Endeavor, I was like, well, that's the bad guy. I saw it coming the entire time. And thus my movie experience was ruined. I've got to say, even if her name wasn't a blatant plot point, there's another problem with this reveal. When you have a character who wears a mask, that makes me, as an audience member, think that the character's mask will eventually be taken off in a big reveal, as most movies do. Because, we'll be pissed if we never figure out who the Screenslaver is. So the movie makes it seem like the identity of the Screenslaver will be important. And so most audience members are thinking that it'll be someone who we've already seen before. Like the reveal of the villain behind the mask at the end of every Scooby-Doo episode. It's almost 100% of the time someone who has already made an appearance, someone that the audience already has an attachment to. Because that adds to our surprise when we learn that that person was secretly the bad guy all along. So the notion that the person wearing the Screenslaver mask would most likely be someone we already know made me start doing some thinking during the movie. And at that point I realized there's not that many characters in these movies. So there's not a lot of potential culprits. In this movie, you've got the Parr family, you've got Frozone, you've got the new team of superheroes, and you have Winston and Evelyn Deavor. So after narrowing it down, I was like, well, it's gotta be either Winston or Evelyn. This movie could have benefited from a seriously good plot twist, other than the one we got. Maybe keeping Evelyn's name, just to throw off the people like me that already caught on that her name was a play on words. Which is what I thought they were going to do, since Brad Bird, the writer and director of this movie, is a smart guy who has proven his worth. So for the entire movie, I was crossing my fingers that Evelyn would not be the villain of this movie, and maybe it would be like this crazy plot twist that I hadn't thought of. So what plot twist could have saved this movie? Well, I have an idea that I'd like to pitch. To start, I'm basing this plot twist idea off of my opinion that Syndrome is the best part of The Incredibles. As a villain, Syndrome was way ahead of his time. He's better than most superhero villains today. And he actually had a really compelling plan, and created interesting stakes for our heroes. He also wasn't generic. He had a unique personality that separated him from other villains, and he had a dramatic origin. So, fueled by my love of Syndrome, I was thinking that maybe Brad Bird and the makers of this movie also knew how great a character Syndrome was, and decided to rope him into this second movie by having Syndrome be the Screenslaver all along. That would be awesome. I mean, how awesome would that be? So let's say Syndrome never dies, like he supposedly does in the first film. He escapes somehow with his advanced tech, or maybe he faked his own death, or maybe he's seriously mangled by the accident that almost killed him in the first movie, and so he wears a mask. Maybe that's a little dark, but other Pixar films, like Toy Story 3, and even the first Incredibles movie, have shown me that children's movies can deal with darker themes. I mean, the first Incredibles movie starts with a guy trying to commit fucking suicide. So Syndrome. After he was defeated in the first movie and he escaped, let's say he was seriously injured by the accident. He has a newfound and even stronger hatred for all superheroes, particularly the Pars, and now wants them all to go extinct. He changes his plan from the first movie, so rather than wanting everyone to be super, he now wants all supers to be exiled by the people, just like the Screenslaver says. After having been identified as the villain in the first movie, he doesn't think that he'll convince people, so he puts on the mask. I mean, this would be dope. This twist would have connected the second Incredibles to the first and made us realize how great that first film was. And how badass would it be to have the Screenslaver take off his mask and it's Syndrome, with like a bunch of scars on his face, and he's much more hardened and evil than the nerdy and goofy version we saw in the first movie. When I thought of this upon my first viewing of Incredibles 2, sitting there in the theater, I was like, damn, they could really pull this off. They don't make mention of Syndrome once in this movie. So that made me think that maybe Syndrome would get a later reveal. And as Syndrome was my favorite part of the first Incredibles, I was kind of sad. The only thing that surprised me about the twist in Incredibles 2 was how childish and simple it was. The Incredibles from 2004 was known for pushing past the idea that kids' movies couldn't be complex and mature. And considering this is such a new film, I was amazed at how it didn't seem to catch up with how mature and expanded the superhero genre has become. Incredibles 2 was a massive disappointment, for me at least. I totally understand why other people like it, but as I grew up watching the first Incredibles, I guess I had a lot of expectations for the second one, especially since the entire cast and director and writer were returning. Listen, Incredibles 2 is a solid film on its own. It has a ton of fun moments, and it's great to see all the characters come back. But I personally think it's really weak in comparison to the first, and I was upset coming out of the theater. So maybe tossing Syndrome into this movie would have been a cheap shot, but I really like when sequels make callbacks to the movies that came before them. I mean, who doesn't like references?
I love you.
They didn't talk about Syndrome once in this movie. I was hoping for just a reference to his death in this movie, but there was nothing. Anyway, Incredibles 2 was fun, but because of the hype for it, I found myself forcing myself to enjoy it, and I just can't do that anymore. Maybe including a Syndrome plot twist in this movie would have been lame. But hey, it's just an idea. What did you guys think about this movie? Do you think a Syndrome plot twist would have helped? Or do you think it should have stayed the way it was? Thank you for watching. Please go ahead and like this video and subscribe to this channel if you want more videos like this one. I'm having a lot of fun making these videos so far.